everyone. I'm Deacon Adam Roberts with Stories That Work. And my guest today is Kenny Scott. Kenny and I have been friends for a few years. In case you haven't watched this show before, the basic format is that we talk for 10 to 20 minutes. You're able to comment in the section below. Feel free to ask questions. We usually hold off on addressing the questions or the comments until the end when the guest is finished talking. But if we see something that makes sense or that Kenny wants to go ahead and address, we'll do that. My job is to just sit here and listen while our guests share valuable, important information. So I try not to talk too much and just be a prompt. Kenny, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? You're congratulations, you're the first non-clergy. You're the first lady I've had on the show. So why don't you introduce yourself real quick, who you are, where you are, before we get into the topic of non-Orthodox visitors.
So my name is Kenny Scott. I am from St. George Orthodox Church in Prescott, Arizona, under Father Jeffrey Freight. I've been there since October 2010, and over time I've kind of taken the lead for our evangelism department, and so that takes into account like actually actively going fishing for new people, and also taking care of people as they come in, as like a greeter community and welcoming committee, that kind of stuff. With all aspects of just kind of making someone who is Orthodox or non-Orthodox feel at home in our parish.
Okay. And you've, when you say you're in charge of evangelism, I don't think people understand the amount of effort and energy and time that you've put into this. Can you go through just a little bit of that history? So, because I don't want them to think you're just another guy who's interested. They don't know your history the way I know it. So,
okay. Okay, sure. So about 3 years ago, we were given a grant from Leadership 100, and through that grant, we were kind of asked to experiment and try things. And so that grant's now expired, but it's been a 3-year process, and we've tried to make products, liturgy guides, FAQ guides. We try to do outreach events. We do an event because Prescott is a very dog-friendly town, and so we have some dog-themed events that we participate in when we bless the animals. So we try to find ways to get out in the community and to actively, like I said, kind of like go fishing for unchurched, non-Christian, what have you. We have direct mailing campaigns to Orthodox and non-Orthodox. We have Facebook campaigns. We have normal kind of like a Facebook weekly posting series, but then also on top of that, we actually specifically advertise to people that are not aware of Orthodox at all. And then we have like we essentially have like an evangelism season where from Pentecost to Nativity, where we focus on evangelism. Not to say that we don't focus on evangelism the whole year, but from that evangelism season, it's like an actual focus point where we focus kind of outward, and the rest of the year with the Nativity fast and Lent are focused inward. And so for that, we have like an icon that we bring out of Saint Peter and Paul. I think this year we're going to do Saint John of what is it? There's a Japanese saint that's kind of well known for evangelism, and so we're going to get that icon commissioned, and so that's going to be there to start off our evangelism season. And then we have during the evangelism season we have monthly prayer that we do for it's called the Activists of Saints Peter and Paul, and those are focused on evangelism, and so people are able to participate in the Activists, but they're also able to add people's names to that list that they want to become Orthodox. So we're constantly praying as we're doing this. We're doing it on a monthly basis with our parish, and then our parishioners are also given prayer cards that have a list of names of people that have interacted positively with us on Facebook in the past year. So I save those people's names, and then I write it on a list, and then I put them on the back of a card, and then they're given out to our parishioners to pray for throughout the whole year. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's good. And I think the last thing I want to emphasize is I have visited at least 100 churches in the last several years of my ministry. And I'm not saying you guys are the only ones that do this. I think, yes, Father Alan Boyd, I think you're right. I think it is St. Nicholas of Japan. That's who I thought of when you mentioned the saint. Yeah. And so basically what I was struck by was a lot of the churches that I visited, they would kind of wind down and numbers would struggle or activity would struggle in the summer. In the summertime, when school's out and you get lower attendance, you guys are ramping up at Pentecost and pushing hard for the summer for that evangelism season coming right after Pentecost. And I remember the first time you contacted me about that, I'm like, wow, that's so, felt backwards at first because of what I was used to. And then upon, talks with you, I realized it was exactly right. It's just that a lot of other people have kind of fallen into this American schedule of things wind down in the summer and we're less active and less present. And so
I keep that with the church calendar.
Yeah. I just that's just one of the other examples of all the things you mentioned of that. There's been a lot of effort and energy and time put into this. So let's move right into our topic then. Now that they have a little bit of idea of that you guys are doing a lot with evangelism outreach at St. George, that you've put a lot of thought into this. I think you've got one of the best systems in place for visitors. And last week, we mostly talked about Orthodox visitors. There was some talk of non-Orthodox visitors. So this week, we're going to mostly talk about non-Orthodox visitors. And you've got preparation for Orthodox visitors as well. So I'll let you take the lead. And if you're just now joining us, feel free to ask questions or make comments, and we'll address those when Kenny is done.
Okay. Do you want me to just like the basic structure?
I think maybe we could start with, what are you doing right now? What is
so right now it's we're not so actively seeking a non-church goers right now, but as they come, we try to be receptive and as friendly as we can. So generally, actually every week we have at least 2 people there to greet people, and that's new people and then also our parishioners. So we tie it together, so that way there's always something to do. So essentially we have bulletins, and so we give those to our parishioners. When we see them and say thank you for coming, here's a bulletin, and have just kind of general conversation. But then we're prepared for when there's a non-visitor, and that's kind of our MO for the whole time, is that we always are going to be out there greeting. We are actually trying to do something differently this year. We're going to actually see if we can get maybe 80% of our parish actually involved in the greeting, where we're actually going to call them out and schedule them every week to join us, so that there's some idea that they're taking ownership of this process of greeting and meeting the people that are coming to our parish. So that's the next step, because we feel like right now it's kind of on a few people, and we want to encourage everybody to kind of say that everyone that comes in is part of your family. But anyway, like when they come in, if they're Orthodox, we welcome them and let them into the church. And then if they're not, we usually have a little try like a 3-minute conversation, kind of figure out where they're at, what their background is. And then we have welcome packets that we give them, be custom made. And then once you kind of figure out what's going on, we have one of the greeters take them to a seat, kind of guide them to a place in the church. And ideally, we have them guide them to a place next to someone who we kind of typically know is friendly and will be helpful for someone who's new, maybe like whisper little pieces of advice and that kind of stuff about what's going on in the church and explain what's going on in like a really like polite way. So we try to do that. So new people are sat next to someone who's actually kind of good at dialoguing with new people. And then we have in our welcome packet, we have a liturgy guide, and in that liturgy guide, it actually has the liturgy itself, but then also explains what's going on to someone who's never seen a liturgy before, and kind of gives examples of what's happening, describes the situation, and then obviously like the part that's like kind of really kind of uncomfortable for new people is the communion line, and then the final blessing, and so we try to take that as an opportunity. For the communion line, to have whoever's greeting to go to the front of the communion line, get blessed bread, and then right away bring it back to the people that are our visitors, our guests. And so that we give them blessed bread, And usually at that point, because usually the community line is kind of long and they don't know what to do and it's awkward, it usually ends up being a good place to kind of like, do you have any questions, and kind of answer those quietly. In our welcome packet, we also have an FAQ book, like frequently asked questions about the Orthodox faith, and we might say, this might be a good time to kind of look through this book if you have any questions. And so there's a little bit of conversation, just to kind of again like make another touch through the day. Because ideally, we want to have like a couple of interactions with these people to make them feel welcome, with the ultimate goal being that they would actually go to fellowship hour with us, because that's what happens. Usually if someone comes to fellowship hour, then it's pretty much guaranteed that they're gonna, not guaranteed, but we have a pretty good rate of them coming back to church next Sunday if they can go as far as fellowship hour. And so we do the communion line, and we have a little bit of conversation, and then at the very end you have the final blessing, which is also really awkward for someone who's the first time. And there's a huge line, and there's people kissing the priest's hands, and they're Protestant, and they don't know what this is about. And it's probably like everything they've ever feared is happening right in front of them. So it's super awkward for them. And so what we try to do is like acknowledge that, hey, I know this is super awkward. This is what's happening. You don't have to participate, but afterwards we're going to have fellowship hour, and we're going to have some food, and we have a lot of food to provide for you. We'd like to talk with you. And so then we invite them then. And usually what we do, or what I do, is like, hey, the line's going this way. If you want, me and you, we can walk the other way, and we'll go around the fellowship hour, and we'll skip the whole line, and we'll just have a conversation. And we usually talk. And then ideally at fellowship hour, when that comes in, I want to figure out with that conversation, who's the next person I'm going to give them to. And so we try to have that guest not interact just with me, but also someone else in the parish. So like if I think, oh, this person kind of seems like Raymond or Ty or someone else, then I'm going to say, oh, you should talk to Raymond and maybe take them to Raymond or to Ty, that kind of thing. So that they're kind of already establishing connections. And then through that, and then, so that's kind of the Sunday liturgy day. And then we have an offer for a free book. So if they fill out the information about who they are, they can take it to our bookstore, and we have like I think there's 8 books now to choose from that are kind of all about Orthodoxy, kind of like your basic intros, and maybe some are for Baptists, or some are for Buddhists, or some are for Catholics. So there's kind of like different themes that they might be able to pick up. That gives them a free book on Orthodoxy, just for giving us that new information. And if they do that, generally what happens is that means we have their email and their phone number. And so that means like in the next few days, they're going to get a phone call from our priest. They're going to get a postcard in the mail from us, inviting them back. And then it keeps them on track to hopefully come back again. So usually we have a series of phone calls, emails, and postcards that we send out in response to every visitor that comes, based upon whatever information they're able to provide us.
Can you hold up the welcome packet and let us
yeah, sure,
get a peek at that? And I want to emphasize that this is what they receive when they walk in. This is not a gift they receive. Some churches will give out something at the end of the service during coffee. Come on over, here's a gift bag with information. I think this is helpful. Yeah, because this was custom made. You guys made this.
Yeah.
And I think it has information from your priest, like from Father Jeffrey, right?
Yeah. There's stuff from other church fathers and what have you, but then also stuff from Father Jeffrey as well. And this is like an FAQ book. And it just has, your basic like Protestant questions about Mary and icons and that kind of stuff. And so we provide short answers. And then there's a series of cards inside. Like this one here is on church etiquette, about food and drink, standing and sitting, talking and clothing, which has actually been pretty helpful, because usually, Protestants being Protestants, myself being one in the past, like you would bring food into the church, and this kind of saves us from saying, hey, don't do that, because a lot of times if that happens, they'll get to this card and then kind of go, oh, and then they'll take it back out. Yeah, so that helps without us being like like kind of jerks. Yeah. And then we have a card about how we feel about children, that they're welcome here, and that they're going to make noise. Don't be afraid. Please stay here. Got a basic timeline of the church kind of thing. And then an invitation to potluck afterwards. And then our basic info, website, Facebook group, that kind of thing. And then an invitation to have a church tour as well, like to actually, like if you're interested in what the building is about, going on in the building, please talk to us and we'll give you a tour of the church. And then the free book card with the information on the back. And then what's lacking right now is at least what we found, because like a lot of this in his 3 years of doing this is a lot of trial and error, probably a lot more error than success, unfortunately. But we noticed that we were short on what to do for people that were interested in the church and maybe we're coming for 2 or 3 weeks, but it wasn't like, what happens next kind of thing. And so that's what we want to do next. This year, I'm going to develop a next steps card to kind of tell them, okay, so if you are interested, this is what happens. This is how you become a catechumen. This is how if you want to be an inquirer. We have a class upstairs every Sunday, that kind of stuff, so that they know that there's a bit of a guide on what to do next to kind of get closer to chrismation.
And then just a ballpark, so people understand the investment you're making. This welcome packet, it's like $15 or $20?
It was. We've taken it down to $8.
Okay.
Yeah, just changing sizes and stuff like that. We're trying to figure out because obviously we can't do this forever at that rate. So we try to figure out how do we actually make this more cost effective. And so we've trimmed margins and that kind of stuff. And so essentially now we're down to $8.
And you had a little bit of a, well, not really. I don't know if it was a problem, but it was kind of funny how you had a lot of parishioners wanting them and taking them.
Yeah. Yeah, they saw that and like, oh, I want one too. And I was like, oh, that's not the point. But yeah, that did happen, which is good. But yeah, so we figured out some ways to be a little bit more cost effective, cardboard sizes and that kind of thing.
Awesome. Okay. And then I think the last thing that I want to ask about, and I don't know what you call them, but I reference that you've got some cards on like a ring, cue cards or something. So if we could go through those, and this is what the greeter has for those of us that have short-term memory. It helps. Yeah. So if you could go through what those are and what the greeter is doing with that.
Yeah. So essentially we divide, there's like the greeting, our greeting program into 7 steps. There's preparation before church starts, like just kind of cleaning out the narthex, making sure everything's nice. And then there's the greeting itself, seating them, communion, final blessing, fellowship hour, the reporting. And so essentially it's just a cheat sheet for all that stuff I said before, and it kind of walks through like if this person's Orthodox, if this person's non-Orthodox, if this person's returning. It's kind of has like some mock conversations to say like how to greet them, what not to say, what the goal is. There's a part in there like one's let's see, like once you seat them, because this is everyone's problem, is like you just met someone, you're nervous, your first time greeting somebody. And it says, hey, my name's Kenny. And then you sit him down, and then you're like, what was his name? What was that guy? And it was just like, and so we have that in there, like, beeline it back, saying their name over and over again, so you don't forget before writing it down. So that you seat them, and you just keep saying their name until you write it down. Like, you don't talk to anybody else, you write the name down. Because we have a little, just a little paper guest log. It's pretty generic. But that's where we keep everything, and then I ended up putting it in a spreadsheet the other day, and I track like if they came back. I also track like what service they went to, who invited them, what was the source, was it the website, was it Facebook ads, was it direct mailing, was it an invite from a parishioner, and I also track like if it's what book it was that they ended up purchasing or getting the free book, and I track it all down to like eventually like what those people, which percentage of those people became catechumens, which became converts, that kind of thing.
That's all my questions. I don't see any questions or comments right now that we need to address in the section. The last thing I want to point out was, and you and I have talked about this before, and I don't know if you were doing this before we talked about it or if it came after, but I think one of the most important things you can do with visitors is who they sit with during the liturgy. Yeah. That can make or break the experience for them. It's already going to be weird and awkward. And if you can put them next to what I call a good host, who's ready to host them through the liturgy, and hopefully if we can't assume that you're always available or that you're always there. So if you put them with the host and the host knows, okay, I've got visitors, I've got to take care of them. I've got to help them make sure what they're doing. And that little bit of relationship dramatically changes the chances of them going over to fellowship hour. Yeah, right. Because now there's somebody they know, and it's not just all strangers. And a lot of our visitors don't want to go to a fellowship hour with all strangers.
Right.
And
a lot
so,
of the greeter ministry is just removing roadblocks. I mean,
yeah,
that's the main thing, is like just make this as smooth as possible. I
right,
mean, people are going to come back or they're not going to come back, but I don't want them to not come back because we didn't do something we could have done better.
right. Exactly. You're just trying to help them make the best informed decision, but you can't make them come back. But you're right. We mess it up a lot, and we have a lot of obstacles that we could get out of the way.
Yeah,
So
we learned a lot. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, any parting words you want to say before we wrap up? I mean, and we'll say goodbye.
Yeah, no, we just learned a lot of trial and error of, like, because once you do it, you start thinking about it more as you're actually living it, and you're seeing like, oh, these are a lot of ways that we have messed up in the past, and these are some ways that we let people go that we weren't quite aware, and it's really hard to because a lot of times people leave like right at final blessing, because it's that weird awkward stage. It's their first time there, and like, okay, and they've been through a lot, they've been through the liturgy. It's just a lot of new stuff. And it's a really nice time for them just to exit. And so that's a hard thing, is trying to, like, we need to connect before they do that, because, they're going to take off. And really it's that extra 10 minutes from the final blessing to the fellowship hour that can change if they're going to come back or not. So that's really important. And as a personal failure with this program is that we realized that we're not very good, and we're trying to address this coming year, that we're not doing very well with guests that are already Orthodox. Like, we're really good at nailing the non-Orthodox, and like we got this nice plan, but if they're Orthodox, we're not doing very well at making them feel welcome, or because we're focused in one direction. And so this year we want to be more cast a larger net and do better there, because we realize that that's something that we've missed the mark on. So
you need to, and if somebody else is watching this has that same issue, go to our missions and evangelism website, missionsandevangelism.com. If you go under pastoral, I believe, but right there on the front page in our news section, we have a new PDF download on how to onboard Orthodox visitors.
Oh, awesome. Okay,
yeah, so it's ready to go. Those are gathered notes from our guest last week, Father Matthew Thurman, who's in Ohio, and so in Chagrin Falls, and so he did a great job of putting that together. We had been talking about that for a while, and I love, my job title is content creator, but I'm always happy for someone else to do it if they've got, and he's got a lot of experience in the Cleveland area, where within a 75-mile radius there are 75 Orthodox churches. And so you can imagine you get a lot of Orthodox visitors when you've got that many. I want to highlight for anybody that came in late and missed it that Kenny, at your church, you've got a list of things you're doing. This, I like to sometimes show why I'm interviewing someone. And if I just go off the top of my head of all the stuff that you're doing, I know you do regular retreats. I know you do a regular akathist, Saints Peter and Paul, that's for evangelism. I know that you've done a lot of experimentation on Facebook ads and what reaches people and what doesn't, and how to engage people. I know that you have a really beautiful prayer at the end of your service every Sunday that everyone reads together. And if I remember correctly, it's on the back of the bulletin.
Yeah, and behind every seat in the chairs. And
I remember when you first told me about it, I was like, ooh, I wonder if it's visitor friendly. And it's one of the most beautiful prayers. It really is one of the most beautiful evangelism prayers I've ever heard, because I don't think there's a single visitor who could hear that and have a problem with it. I mean, it's not that it's like, trying not to offend. It just really gets to the heart of love. And so that's just a short list of all the things that Kenny and everyone at St. George in Prescott, Arizona is doing in terms of evangelism outreach. And I say all that because, and this greeter program and your visitor program is part of it. When I first visited you guys, you weren't full at all. And now you are basically full. And it would probably be hard to point to one thing. And what I've always said is there's not one thing, there's not a silver bullet in outreach and evangelism. It's going to take 5, 10, 15, 20 things that you're doing. And then all of a sudden, something's happened and everything's different. And all of a sudden you looked up one day and it was full on a Sunday morning.
Yeah. For me, like all the stuff that we've been doing is really just to get to the point so that we have in our church a culture and an environment that is always evangelistic. Like that's the point, is to do all these things that they eventually add up to our whole parish kind of just being this way, and so that we don't actually need to do all the stuff that we've been doing. It's just part of our nature. That's the goal.
Yeah. So, well, thank you so much for being on today. If you have questions for Kenny, you can find him on Facebook. And this is what you look like in most of your pictures, unless it's Pentecost or right after Pascha.
Yeah.
You go through a grooming. He grooms himself once a year.
Once a year, that's it.
So he might look a little bit different right after Pascha.
Yeah.
But that's about it. So I really appreciate you coming on today. I love what you are doing and your team there, and under the spiritual guidance of Father Jeffrey. I think he's done a great job of giving you some leeway to go out and try some stuff and make it happen. And you guys are definitely you're full. I don't know how else to say it. You're full. You have a space problem. Who doesn't want
a space problem? Yeah.
You have a space problem. So
we're at the 80-20 rule. It's killing us.
It's killing you. I know. Well, that'll have to be a different episode.
Okay.
But thank you so much for coming on today. Like I said, if you want to reach out to Kenny and ask him questions, find him on Facebook. Do you want to share your church website real quick?
Oh yeah, it's just PrescottOrthodox.com.
PrescottOrthodox.com. All right. Thank you so much for being on today, and I'll see all of you next Thursday. Adios.